my name's Rashaad Bajwa. I'm the president of Domain Computer Services. I'm also on the board of NJ BIA. This is an area that we are constantly at Domain and the other companies that we work with. We're constantly evaluating how good we are. Are we part of the problem? Are we part of the solution? A big reason is because we're in technology, and 95% of the people who are in our space are men. And we need to regularly evaluate, are we part of the problem, or is it just the way that tech is? And so unconscious bias is something that's very near and dear to us. With that being said, I do want to introduce our panelists to you as well. We have some great folks here who have a lot of expertise, some on the coaching area, some in the HR area, some as just business leaders, about this unconscious bias, analyze or eradicate. So I'm going to start from here and then work my way down. I'm going to announce them all, and then I'm going to ask them to just share about 30 seconds or so, maybe a little bit more about their role, what they do, and what their relationship to unconscious bias is. So first, we have Bill Bradshaw. Bill Bradshaw is the National Manager for Inclusion and Diversity with KPMG. Then we have Marjorie Perry, who's the President and CEO of MZM Construction. Then, right after her, we have Krishna Powell, who's the CEO of HR for Your Small Biz. And then we have Rhonda Uretzky. Did I pronounce that right? Uretzky?
You got it.
Okay, good. Author and personal coach. So, Bill, if you don't mind, just a quick intro.
Thanks so much for having me today. Bill Bradshaw from KPMG. Really excited to be with you all and share the discussion. So, by way of introduction, I do sit on our national I&D team, so we call it I&D at the firm, so inclusion and diversity. Some folks call it diversity and inclusion, but we do a really good job at educating our folks around unconscious bias with our KPMG Include series, so I'll touch a little bit on that today as well.
Good afternoon. I'm Marjorie Perry from MZM Construction and Management. We are a $20 million construction firm in Newark, New Jersey. Primarily work on superstructures, bridges, hotels around the country. Primarily East Coast. And inclusion for me is a given. That's what we do. What we have to fight is sometimes going out into the marketplace as being good enough and great enough to do the projects that's presented before us. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
Hi, I'm Krishna Powell, and I work with small to medium-sized businesses in regards to their diversity, their inclusion, helping them to understand what does it take to truly be an all-encompassing environment, especially or all-encompassing organization, especially when you look at being global and having the outreach that many, even small businesses, desire to have. So what does that look like in the workplace, and how do you get to be successful? So some of my clients include the Girl Scouts, construction companies, and the like, just thinking about how do they even attract and retain millennials and Gen Zers and get them invested and engaged. And so we'll talk about that, what unconscious bias looks like even to that generation.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Uretzky, and some of you are going to find my book on your chair. I threw some of them around there, but I have been a yoga and personal empowerment coach for 45 years. And I have seen lots of people come in from lots of different industries who think they're coming in to do yoga, but they're really coming in because they're stressed from all this stuff out there that they face. And my point of view is that there's always going to be stuff out there that you face, but if you are personally empowered, then you can face any of it, and that's what I teach, personal empowerment.
Excellent. Thank you all. Before we get into the actual questions and the conversation, just a quick backstory on this. And even before I get into the backstory, who here has read the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell? Who here has heard of it? Okay. So, Blink is actually very much related to unconscious bias, definitely unconscious evaluations of others. And so, thank you. And so, the point of the book, by the way, interestingly enough, is it's telling you the power of our reptilian brain to immediately assess the danger or the value of a situation and make judgments that help save our lives or make us better able to read the world. Now, the problem, though, is that quick reptilian brain, that the amygdala, sometimes loads us with biases. And so I'm gonna actually just read for you real quick the definition of unconscious or implicit bias off of Wikipedia, because that's where we get everything from now. And then I'm gonna open it up to the panel and get their feedback on this definition, and then the title of this entire session is Unconscious Bias, Analyze or Eradicate. What are they doing, or what would they recommend to analyze your own behavior, and can you eradicate it? But first, let's start with the actual definition. So an implicit or unconscious bias is an implicit stereotype. It's an unconscious attribution of particular qualities to a member of a certain social group. Measurement of this effect has been termed as pseudoscience by some peers, which interesting point, which we may want to discuss as well. But implicit stereotypes are shaped by experience and based on learned associations between particular qualities and social categories, including race, gender, etc. So I'm going to start down here with Bill and move our way down. Number one, that's the definition according to Wikipedia. You can either build on it or argue with it. But specifically, when it comes to, and I'm going to start with the hiring process. When it comes to the hiring process, what are tools we can use to measure and analyze our own unconscious bias? And can we eradicate it? Do we want to eradicate it?
Great question. So, you know, as a firm that hires quite a few folks every year, specifically right out of universities, it's one of the things that we really challenge our folks to do and look at every year. So can we eradicate it from the hiring process? I wish I could say yes, but unfortunately we cannot. But some of the things that we have instituted for our folks to look at is, you know, suggesting that we remove where the student went to school, right? Rather than they just give us a degree. You know, we know that they have a BS in accounting with a 3.85, but we don't necessarily have to know that they graduated from Rutgers per se, right? Because that person in the room that's interviewing them may also be a Rutgers grad and also automatically think that person's better than the person next to them who went to mom's university, let's just say, right? So it's one of the things that we've kind of looked at doing. We also have really equipped our leaders and our hiring managers to stop and pause before they make that final selection and see, is there any biases in the process? Am I choosing people that are like me, right? Do I have an affinity bias because the person sits closer to me in my office? You know, am I making this decision because I need to make it really fast and I need to put someone in that decision, in that role, so I'm just making the quickest decision possible? So there's multiple layers of what bias show up during that process, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm going to speak from another point of view. Sometimes, I'm in a great program right now at Harvard about these kinds of conversations. And one of the things that I found myself doing when I would go in a room to talk about being on a $100 million project, I would lead with being a woman of color and a woman. I figured I would get that out the way. The second thing was that there was an automatic bias sometimes, you know, in the hiring process for a larger developing company who says, well, we really don't think you're ready yet. No matter what my experience shows, no matter what it is, that's your unconscious bias. Now, my work, they don't have anything to say that the work has not been done well professionally, Rutgers University, Marriott hotels. But when it comes time to go in and bid a $100 million project, you all of a sudden are pushed back to, well, just stay in this box, or call you an MBE, WBE. Well, I already know I'm black, I already know I'm a woman, but I can do your job. And that is the unconscious bias, not just women of color, but women, period, have to go in that they can't do anything outside of the box that has been directed for them.
When I think about unconscious bias and the fact of can it be eradicated, it can't.
It can't, right?
I mean, think about the word itself, unconscious. How can you eradicate something that you're not even aware of that you're doing?
That's exactly right.
And so what I like to remind leaders is that analysis is a requirement, but it takes courage. Real courage to look in the mirror and go, ooh, not only is my hair out of place, but my attitude is out of place. My preferences are impacting decisions that I'm making. This is not about you saying and admitting, I'm a racist, I'm discriminatory. It's about merely preference and going, how is it impacting the decisions I'm making, the decisions my leaders are making, the decisions employees are making even when they interact with our customers? Do they make a decision when they see a little brown girl with braids in her hair that, oh, she's not as professional as someone with a slick back ponytail? Is that impeding decision-making and how they're interacting with your customers? You never know until you're bold enough, courageous enough to hold up the mirror and challenge yourself as well as your leaders. Let's take a look here and see what we need to do to get ourselves together, to be better. And it's an ongoing daily practice, a moment-by-moment practice. You're always learning in this area of unconscious bias because you're not aware. So always be open when someone says, did you realize you did X, Y, and Z? Instead of defending it and saying, well, let me tell you. No, take time to really breathe, pause, as we said, and then go, okay, let me really take a look at myself and see what maybe I can do differently next time.
I think that's a great point, and I was going to say the same thing. How can you be aware of something that you're unconscious of? I mean, by its very nature, not only is it unconscious bias, but to build on that concept in Blink, there's something called confirmation bias, which means that when you already have a bias, your little brain sort of filters only the information to you that supports your bias. So you don't even see it as a bias, you just see it as the way the world is. And everything that you see from that point forward, your brain, and this has actually been studied in fMRIs, that your brain will filter only the information to you that supports your bias. So if that's the case, we all have to admit that we have it. We all have brains, neurons that wire together, fire together, wire together, and that's what happens. You have an experience, you make a judgment. From that point forward, that judgment becomes your bias, and then you see the world through your, what my manager used to call your shit-colored glasses. You see the world through that bias. So you do, like Krishna says, you have to be courageous enough to say, I not only don't want to be biased, I don't want to be boxed in. I don't want to be a person who just sees the world from this little box. I really do want to step outside my biases, my confirmation bias, my little reptilian brain, and be able to experience things on a bigger level. And that makes you feel great. That's why you do it. You don't necessarily do it to be a better person or to serve the world. You do it because it feels really terrific. It feels wonderful to be an empowered person who's inclusive.
Okay, thank you. No, that really good advice. I want to dig further in this area, in particular about the employment. Later on, we'll get to other areas of unconscious bias, but let's talk about this employment area. And I'm going to get myself in trouble first a little bit by relaying a story. So my brother-in-law in 2008 got laid off and decided he was going to get his MBA. So then he started applying to a whole bunch of pharmaceutical companies around New Jersey, because that's what you do when you're in New Jersey and you have an MBA. And he could not get interviews anywhere. Like, he literally went to every major pharmaceutical company, could not get interviews anywhere. One thing I didn't mention is his name is Zenayed Ashraf. My name's Rashaad Bajwa. That's hard enough. And to make it worse, Zenayed Ashraf is spelled with a J. So we call him Jay-Z. But Zenayed Ashraf applied everywhere and just was not getting anywhere. He changed his name to Jason Ashraf. Applied to all of the same companies and got interviews at almost all of them. All of the big pharmaceutical companies that you know in New Jersey, that I'm sure have diversity and inclusion programs and whatever, all of that sort of stuff. And the reason I'm saying I'm going to get myself in trouble is, even though my name is Rashaad Bajwa, I realized when I'm looking through resumes, there's certain names that our team asks for, are they legally in the country? Almost just because of the name, like a Zenayed Ashraf or Rashaad, do we need to sponsor them? If it's a David Anderson, we're not asking that question. And so that immediately, this is quite some time ago, this is, as I said, about 12 years ago, but that was an unconscious bias that I realized. So let's let's talk about the brass tacks. What are examples of unconscious bias? And I use the hiring process, but maybe you have another one, where either you were guilty, like I was, or you have been maybe seen it, somebody else perpetrating it. So let's start with Rhonda and work our way back, or throw things out whenever you, and this is actually one of the ones where if one of you is itching to share something, please do mention that as well, so that way we can all learn from it. What does it look like in the real world?
You know, I haven't been in a corporate environment in many, many years. Like I said, I've been a yoga instructor, mentor, coach for 45 years, and a mindfulness training coach. But one of the things that I have seen is that this confirmation bias thing works both ways. See, if you have been discriminated against, you're also going to have an unconscious bias, a confirmation bias that says, when I go to this pharmaceutical company, they're not going to want to see me because I have a foreign name. It's really a double-edged sword. So,
But isn't it true? I mean, just
well,
because...
now this is a good question. What is true and what is it that you're making true? What are you empowered to make true? Because like I said, this confirmation bias works both ways. It works from your side too. If you have an expectation that your name is going to create a bias, and if you change your name, it's going to make a difference, how much of your confirmation bias is contributing to the result?
I don't know.
It really, the brain is a really funny
I'm a
thing.
confident guy.
I'm a confident person.
Yeah.
And I have to push back on
But
that.
This is good, though. This is good.
It's
Please do.
unconscious.
Please do.
But I'm just saying,
Push.
unconsciously, I don't tell people on the phone when they hear my voice that I'm black. So I don't care if it's a white audience. Or I'm assuming your brother-in-law. I don't
Yeah.
care. But as soon as I hit the door and they open the door, oh, you're black.
Do you expect it?
No.
After all these years of experiencing
Well, a
it, you
little
still,
bit
all right.
But
I'm
at
just
the end
saying,
of the
this is where the
day,
awareness begins.
but wait a minute, I got to the door with credentials. I got to the door with credentials. They didn't see me sight unseen. So, and I'm going to give you a story. That's why I'm just pushing back just a little bit, because we all have unconscious bias. I don't think I have unconscious bias. I think I have out loud bias.
Good for
Now,
you.
that's
I'm sorry, say that one more
Good
time?
for you.
I
What-
have
That's
out
awareness.
loud bias.
Out loud.
Okay, I'm going to do my best to get to the door, but Johnny's going to open the door, Macmillan or Mallory from Ireland. What? I'll give you a good example.
I just want to say,
but let me
this
just
is
say,
really great.
I had a big job down in Washington, D.C. They never saw me. I brought a bag of peanuts with me because I knew what was going to happen. It's a $20 million job. I'm the prime. I went over in the corner. I sat down and shelled my peanuts. Would not acknowledge me for the first 30 minutes. I'm just shelling peanuts. Actually, I got a chair and started putting my feet up a little because I figure it's going to be a long afternoon. Finally, they said, and who are you? I said, I'm the person that's going to pay you. You're Marge Perry? What do you call that? Now, so I'm
It's a
aware
little
of
of
the out,
both.
yeah, but I'm out loud bias.
But I'm saying that,
That's what
I'm
I'm
not
saying.
saying there's not bias out there. Trust me,
I
it's
have
real.
bias. I mean,
It's
you know.
absolutely real. But I'm going to push you a little bit.
Go ahead.
Did you go to that meeting expecting there to be
Wearing it
some
on your sleeve.
bias?
Is that what you're saying?
I'm not even saying consciously.
Okay.
But the fact that
I
you
went
went in with the
consciously. I
peanuts.
went consciously.
Right.
I wasn't unconscious.
So how much
Sat
of
in the
your
back of the room.
confirmation bias
Right. I
is
sat in the back of
contributing?
the room. And not the back. I was actually on the end.
Okay.
Okay. I tend to just sit on the edge. I brought the peanuts because I said, here we go. That's a
you go.
conscious bias. You keep saying unconscious.
Okay.
I'm
I
aware.
said, actually, I'm saying confirmation
You saw it coming,
bias.
yeah.
I see
It's
it coming.
confirmation bias.
So I come in the
That's it.
room,
Yeah.
I sit down, I'm the lead, $20 million job, it's mine. I've won. They don't want to acknowledge me.
I'm going to challenge you the next time this happens.
Mm-hmm.
Walk in there in your best clothes, things that make you feel like you
I was
rock.
dressed now. I was
I'm just
cute.
saying, no peanuts.
I just
I'm
had a bag of
go in
peanuts.
the room, go in the room like you own it and expect them to pay
No.
attention to you.
You know
So
what?
there's where the that's where it is.
So let me chime in. Let me chime
It's called The View.
in. I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
But there are people who, as you said, confirmation bias, they confirm it. Wait.
but that's the
Wait,
bias.
listen, no, it's not the bias. Listen to me.
Yeah.
My name is Krishna. Indian name.
By the way, I assumed
When I-
you were Indian.
When I walk through the door, they say to me,
That's what I get.
"You're Krishna," and then they go, "So, how did you come up with that name? How do you know about that
That's
name?"
right.
That's not. I'm not. That's
Sorry.
like,
No question.
No, this is
what I'm
good.
saying to you is
Keep doing it.
that requires me to become conscious and become prepared that when I step into the room, that's what I'm going to be greeted with. Not to be offended by it, but you need to be prepared for it. Because if it catches you off, you're like, really? We can't.
But
You
here's
have
what
to
I'm
name
Rhonda,
Mary and I
are you
didn't
saying it can be egged on?
I'm saying
or
it's a
something?
slippery slope.
Okay.
I'm not talking about unconscious bias, I'm saying confirmation bias.
right.
There's a slippery slope there.
Now
And
we're
I'm
going
not
into like what
saying
we're purposely
that
doing.
You didn't
Right.
have experiences that absolutely validated this. Clearly you did.
But what I'm saying
But
is
where
she
your
has a
place is-
responsibility to be prepared. It would be ignorant of her to know that that's taking place and not come in ready for such a thing to happen. And because she comes in ready, she's able to engage them in conversation and bring them on board versus going, now I have an attitude with you.
Right.
Because she
But
could
you don't
taken
have to have an
that route.
attitude. See, what I'm saying is that, listen, like I said, I'm not saying bias doesn't exist. I'm not saying
Right.
you all didn't experience it. I'm not saying that you're not valid for having these feelings. But I'm saying that because there's confirmation bias as well as unconscious bias, you are confirming it as well. Even by being prepared, what you're preparing for is this
So
obstacle.
okay, so you say that, what's the change?
The change
So I go
is-
in the room, or you
Make
go in the
up a
room.
story. Tell yourself before you go in the room, they're all going to stand at attention when I walk in this room.
It's not gonna
and I'm
happen.
gonna- But that's why it won't.
It won't happen.
That's part of the
What-
reason
what I-
why it
What I'm
won't.
trying to understand is what is the difference?
What's the difference?
If she comes into the room.
I'm just.
So,
Because
all I'm saying is-
Rhonda,
Here's a question.
yeah,
No,
over here.
what is
Okay,
the- What is
guys,
the advantage?
microphone.
Oh, the advantage is you're empowered.
Yes.
But I'm empowered anyway because I know my name
Okay,
and my background.
one second.
Honest.
Yes.
But as a woman,
Okay.
there's always.
We have a story here.
Ah, that's your confirmation
Okay,
bias.
Krishna and Rhonda.
Sorry, we're having fun up
No,
here.
this is good. No, this is really good. Yeah. No one has opinions about millennials, do they?
But I get shit on all the time because I'm a millennial
You go, girls.
and I own it. But I walked into a room and I am the only millennial senior HR leader in my organization. My colleague here, she knows it. So I walk into a room and I'm usually called kid. Right? Hey kid, and I'm beginning, I was like, who the F are they talking
And it's not because
about?
you came in on a scooter.
I felt like I was, so
Right?
the next meeting I went to, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go in me. And if they think I'm a kid, and if they think I'm whatever, let them think.
That's what I do.
So I just walked in and I sat in my spot, or wherever spot I chose, and I just did me.
Right.
And so there could be confirmation bias. I try to come prepared, like, if I get a seat at this table, I better say something good. Like,
Right.
I finally have a voice and I'm gonna say something. And I used to work at Panasonic, and I love the people I work with, but I used to work there in a more junior role, and I came back to lead an entire department. And a lot of people were like, who did they hire to do that? She's so young. How does she have all this experience? So I had to do a lot of proving myself, which I think anyone in their career has done. But when I got that kid comment, I was like, oh,
So-
so that's how they saw me.
So what do you think about, you walked into that room,
Yes,
And-
say, how was that
you
experience?
walked in the room and you were expecting something,
But
did that prepare you?
But I didn't
Or-
change myself.
Or did it
I
make it
just-
happen?
I didn't change myself. From the last meeting I had versus this one, this was me. Like, I wasn't changing my persona.
Don't-
I knew I had
How
my
did
seat.
it feel for you to do that? To come in as, this is who I am, it doesn't really
But
matter
it sat
what
in
you
my
say.
head at the end of that meeting. I was like, I
And
wonder
the
if they
reality
thought
is,
of
you can't
anything
walk into
different.
that room thinking something's going to happen and then
Yeah.
be unprepared for it.
Yeah.
That being said, just thinking you're going to get treated like a kid, I don't know that makes people treat you like a kid.
Yeah.
Unless you
That's-
come in like a kid.
But
It's
see,
part of
I don't
the
think you were coming in like a
confirmation
kid.
bias
Tell
that
me
they
if
do.
I'm
All right,
wrong.
we're gonna get Bill in on this one. Bill, what are your thoughts?
You know, it's interesting to hear them all actually, and I sit and I reflect because we don't know what we don't know about somebody else, right? So I constantly will say that all the time is I don't know what I don't know because I don't live the experience that Marge lives, right? I don't live the experience that you live. But these things absolutely happen every day in every decision we make, and we can say they don't, but they do. I can tell you as I was driving here and someone was driving not the speed limit in the wrong lane on the parkway, I automatically think what, right? You have these fast decisions your brain make, right? So we're all there. It happens. So someone discrediting you because of your age, it's a bias. You could be, the person that's doing it could be 3 years older than you, right? And look 15 years older than you because they've been working, you know, at a different capacity, but it doesn't matter. It's there. So I think one of the things we need to realize is that we have a brain, we have a bias, whether it's unconscious, conscious, or, you know, whatever we want to call it, and how we can mitigate what we do every day to make sure that those things don't show up first in business decisions, in people decisions, in hiring decisions, and how we can really manage that process. And it's never going away. Marge will show up at any door. I can show up at any door, and people will assume we're somebody different over the phone. And then when we're in their face, they're like, "Oh, it's a white gay guy, or it's a black woman," right? That's a lens that you may not see, right, over the phone. So that's our experience, and we can't take that away from anybody else. So I totally can hear what you're saying, and as well as Marge and the rest of our panel, that this is something that we'll never eradicate. We can only mitigate, is what I'm saying.
Right.
I want to, if you don't mind, that story of driving on the road just reminded me of something. Again, this is not corporate at all, but in terms of being able to change your own bias. I took a mindfulness training with a Buddhist teacher for many years, and this teacher's idea was pronoia as opposed to paranoia, right? What if everybody out there is an enlightened being, and everything that they're doing is to get you enlightened? Everything that they're pushing at you with is to get you. You are the last person on earth who's not enlightened. So everything that happens to you from other people around you is them trying to push you into enlightenment. Because you've got these last little hurdles to overcome, like bias or preference or judgment. And he told us to practice when you're driving. The next person who cuts you off, think, that's a Buddha who just taught me patience. So I'm driving down the road in my very fast car, and some guy cuts me off, and the first thing I thought of was, son of a bitch, and then I thought, wait, it's a Buddha. And now, and I practiced it, and practiced it, and practiced it, and don't you know, every single time I'm on the road, and I get cut off, or somebody takes my parking spot, or somebody goes through a red light, and I'm in the other lane.
So Rhonda, I think this is great for your mindfulness and your own well-being. There's no doubt about that. From a point of view of your state of mind, okay? Yes. However, when Marge is walking into a meeting, and I'm going to use your example again, ready to present to these people that maybe have biases already, maybe don't have biases. Yes,
but the thing you own is your state of mind wherever you go.
You keep going to a state of mind.
What can you control? Can you control it all? So I'm going to get to the question here. So the question is this. Yeah. So the question is this: how much is it Marge's responsibility to fix the unconscious bias of the whoever is in the room, men, women, whatever it might be? Is it her responsibility just in her mindfulness, or is it who plays a role in this?
What I've seen is that if you take it on as your responsibility in your mindfulness, it will influence others. Gandhi said it, you have to be the change you want to see in the world. Yeah. And that is honestly the only thing that you have within your control. 100% within your control, your mindfulness. And you got to be that change that you want to see.
Can mindfulness fix this all?
You're asking me?
You raised your hand, you're in the game now.
I'm sorry, you got the mic.
Let me tell you, I don't think mindfulness will fix this all because, and this is what I was wanted to comment on. You're talking about confirmation bias.
Yeah.
And that is, you're telling me that I need to confirm to myself that the bias exists?
No. I'm saying that if you've had an experience of bias,
okay,
that little brain starts to hook up with, let's say you had an experience
like you're
of bias
setting yourself up for bias.
Oh, I'm setting myself up for bias.
Because you're presuming that they have malintent or will have bias, right? Is that correct?
It adds to it.
Okay. So here's my concern. If you haven't noticed, I'm a black female. I just want to point out the obvious. I'm going to be like Marjorie here. Yeah, you can confirm it. I have braids.
Right.
I have probably 2 pounds that I need to lose because I'm not going to tell anybody any different. And there are certain things I expect people to think of me.
Good or bad?
Both.
Okay.
Pragmatic.
But I also pass those thoughts onto my children. And I say to them, when you go to interview for a job, because you have natural hair, people are going to think certain things about you. Because you are a little overweight, people are going to make certain assumptions about you. Because you are vertically challenged, because my daughter is only 5'2", people might think certain things about you. You went to an HBCU. And so am I consciously or unconsciously continuing to pass on those biases or the perception of those biases to my children and to other generations, and therefore they will remain in the universe and we will have to deal with them.
What do you think?
Or are you just preparing them for
saying
reality?
I'm preparing them for reality. I think you're trying to tell me something different.
I am.
Do you have a
I'm
son,
trying to say that
by any
you are a
chance?
No, I
co-creator
have
in this
2
reality.
daughters.
So
One's-
I've
one's
heard a lot of stories of black women having to have conversations with their black sons about what to do when they get pulled over.
Yes,
Yes, correct.
because that's not.
Are you projecting it onto the cop?
We're
That's,
not
and that's
project-
where, and
now,
that's
see,
where I was different. That's
Yeah.
what I was trying to say. I
Right.
have 2 black sons, okay? One of them was pulled over 3 days ago in Baskin Ridge, going home. What is that, conscious or unconscious bias?
You know, again, it's a mix. Look, I am a 62-year-old Jewish woman, okay?
They didn't pull you over,
Nobody
though.
could tell that from looking at me that I'm a Jewish woman. And I've got 2 kids who are living in the South, and they're Jewish, all right? So they've got some stuff that they deal with as well. But I am clear with them that if you come from a point of view that you're always going to be pushing against what's out there, you are in some way contributing to the confirmation bias that's out
But
there.
Rhonda, he was on
Not
his way home.
100%.
Rhonda, he's on his way home.
No, I'm not saying
And
it didn't
just,
happen.
but you just have to hear for a minute.
Yeah.
You just have to hear for a minute. He's on his way home. He lives in Baskin Ridge. Okay, and we don't need to make it a black and white thing or a cop thing. It's all kinds of biases.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the police pulled him over. We have to teach him to put your hands up, take your hands off the steering wheel.
I taught my son that
So,
too.
but let me
Yeah.
just stay in this, my moment, and take your hands off the wheel,
Yeah.
okay? I don't think a Jewish male will be pulled over as quickly as.
I mean, the stats
Very
prove.
true.
The stats
Yeah.
prove that, so we don't
Very
have
true.
to go on that. So, he is 40 years old who has to put his hands on the wheel, show his hands. He's making about $500,000 a year. He owns a wonderful home, and he had to get out and be frisked
It sucks.
by the police. But we're just talking about being prepared for what's going to possibly come. We're hoping not.
Right.
But if you don't go in prepared, you can be blindsided, and you become emotional, and then I can't do my deal with my job. I can't close my deal. I can't make it happen.
So
I have
the
to
reason
go.
we have the amygdala in our brain is it's fight or flight.
Right.
It is protection. It's
It's
to make sure
protection.
we survive.
Make sure we
And,
make sure.
and the research shows some of these biases are not bad. Like some of them are good. They're for protection, right?
Absolutely.
It's just so. To
But
your
I just
point-
wanted to say to your point, Rhonda,
Yes.
the theory escapes me, but there is a theory out there that says that if we think something, it will happen to us. We kind of draw it to us, so I
It's sort of
understand what you're
simplified.
saying.
It's simplified. What you're saying is a
Yeah.
simplified version of it, but yeah, there is a theory out there.
So
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, and it's very similar to that theory. Like if
Yeah.
I'm riding down the road and I say, "Oh, I haven't seen any white cars," all of a sudden all I see is white cars.
Right.
That's
It's-
the confirmation
Yeah,
bias.
that's the
Exactly.
confirmation bias that you're
Exactly.
talking about.
Yeah.
But what Marjorie and I are saying is that there are certain things that we are not confirming the bias, we recognize, we're very conscious
And be prepared.
of it. And it's no longer unconscious bias from me, it might be unconscious bias from the individuals that I'm interacting with. And therefore, we have to prepare ourselves for that experience.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not real. It's real. It's out there. Everybody experiences it at some level. You people who have the skin color that, no one can tell I'm Jewish or 62 years old, but you guys really face it a lot more than some of us do. But we live in a different world where there's a new paradigm and we can really measure what's going on with the brain. This stuff about unconscious bias and confirmation bias, we didn't know any of this stuff before, and we do now, and we can leverage it. And there is a kind of a very empowered feeling that you get when you know that you can, in some small way, get out ahead of it.
Okay, so I'm Eileen Greenfield. I work at Berkeley College in media relations. And it's really interesting. I grew up in an urban environment. I'm used to diversity. We promote diversity. But there's another step of taking it beyond this. So you recognize your bias. You recognize that there are biases about yourself that you don't know, and they'll come up. So if I were walking into the room, I probably wouldn't bring peanuts. I probably would sit, take my seat, and see how the reaction was. But then in that position, or when you confront someone in an elevator, a fellow who's older than you, and said, and he called you honey, and you said something, please don't call me honey, and the guy walks off and he complains to the president, and you report to the president. So how far do you take it? If I said, please don't call me honey, or that's how much of a proponent, an advocate, how much do you take that into your own hands, is my question.
Yeah, and I love this topic because it's, it gets back to this back and forth.
Let me clear up the peanuts. It was a metaphor more than I actually took peanuts. It was a professional meeting. So it was just more of a metaphor because I might have been doodling. I don't know what I was doing, but I knew I was not going to be paid. First of all, it's a woman issue that we're struggling with, period, okay? Doesn't matter ethnicity. It's an LGBT issue, where women still have to stay stronger and together because the internet now decides our biases and unconscious biases as well. I've never seen so much crap on the internet about the bullying. I've never seen children bully as deeply as they're bullied today, from the right clothes they wear or the wrong clothes they wear. This young lady who's called a kid in a professional meeting, I mean, how rude is that? Then you have the other side of that, where you have maybe a young millennium come in, and we're the older individuals, and he thinks we're dumb and stupid like that, so we don't bring any contribution to the table. So, as we said before, it will never be eradicated. I just think that if we could take our emotional IQ to another level, and it's like prepping for a meeting. You got to prep, who's your audience? All right, and I think that the more that we have these types of discussions or panels or people give their experiences, and we know that I have to go in a room and we have to prep because, and hopefully not, but I'm going to be prepared, and women are even more so because we're trying to tick up. We're still at 76 cents to $1 that a man's worth, okay? We're still at 76 cents. You don't have that many women sitting on seating boards. And leadership where this bias can maybe change a little bit quicker and faster. You don't have our LGBTQ community sitting on boards where they can help change the culture quicker. So you're going to always have personal biases. What we're trying to do is just bring down the rhetoric in the corporate world or in an entrepreneurial world so that we can at least get our agenda done. Because I wouldn't be where I am today if I got locked into my own biases about someone else. What I do is just read the room, understand the room, and then I go in and participate as much as I can around that conversation.
Krishna, you had something?
So the way that I view it, and I understand both points of view, where she's talking about confirmation bias, but it would be irresponsible of me to not have an umbrella for a rainy day. Your awareness, conscious and
Even if
unconscious,
it might rain.
even for light rain,
Yeah.
you need to have your umbrella. You need to be prepared. Every day I want to wake up and say it's going to be sunshine and
Right.
rainbows. Every day I expect that, but that's not reality. So you're going to have someone that says millennial to you like it's a 4-letter word. You're going to have someone that look at a male in the room and go, why is he at a women's conference? It's going to happen.
He's here.
Speaking of which,
Thank you for
men
coming.
at women's conferences.
Yes.
Uh,
But we have to be, with your umbrella, be able to help someone else. That, you know what, I'm sure this was not intentional, the way you said it, but let me just tell you how it comes across.
So I want to piggyback on that. And this goes to the conversation debate that we've been having, a good one on both sides. And we appreciate all the points of view, by the way, because this is how we have the conversation in the first place. Whose responsibility is, we're talking about the responsibility as of the minority party. So where does the responsibility lie on the, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say perpetrator, but maybe that's a good word, I don't know. But for the white, straight, male, rich, whatever the privileged class is, let's call that, that's better than perpetrator, right? For the privileged party, whose responsibility is this? And I'm going to couch this with, and I'm going to put Bill on the spot here real quick. We were at a diversity and inclusion event, and there was a story that was told. Can you just relay the story real quick?
Yeah, so there was a reference made about an individual. Someone made a reference regarding Native American expression, Indian giver, I think was what it was. And quite often there was no intent behind the expression that was made. However, someone came up at the end of the night, and just made a comment and said, I don't know if you know, and you don't know enough to know because you don't know who's in your room. That person was 85% Native American, and that reference was very derogatory towards that person. And that person happened to be on the board of the organization that person made the comment in front of.
And in that same event, later on, I was coming up on a panel. There was a panelist who was, I would imagine, a straight white man in a diversity and inclusion event. So already, potentially, maybe had a target on him. But that might be some sort of unconscious bias as well, right? But felt that way, I believe. But the reality was, at the end of the event, or right before the panel I was supposed to go on, there was a whole bunch of people who were having a conversation about that straight white man and saying, can you believe he said this? And I had been there listening to the entire presentation, and 10 minutes, wow, this goes quick when you're having fun. But I had been listening to the conversation, and I didn't necessarily see the affront, but it was either about black people in Asbury Park or gay people in Asbury Park, but he said something that was maybe not in good. And now I'm about to go up on a panel, and I'm like, man, what am I going to say that I put my foot in my mouth? There's, this room is not filled with straight white men. But what role do they have, or men in general, and this is a women's conference, and it should be mostly women. But what role do we have? Rhonda says it's within your power to move a lot of this. But how much, just in the pure will of women, can you change the way the business world works without men at least being allies or paying attention? Or whose responsibility is this?
I think it's a two-part responsibility. It's because we're talking about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have a relationship with just one person.
Right.
There's somebody else involved. So you have to engage one another. You have to have conversations.
Is there more
like this
responsibility on the privileged side as opposed to the...
There's no more responsibility because take away the privilege, take away the color, just based on the fact that we are human beings on the same playing field. You got to live like I got to
So
live.
women's empowerment is equally responsible. Men and women are equally responsible for women's empowerment?
We are responsible for each other. For us to go and say, no, that's selfish. Because if he doesn't make it, I don't make it. If I don't make it, he doesn't make it. We're in this
But that
thing
sounds very
together.
enlightened. Is everyone that enlightened?
No, that's why I said it has to be a partnership of communication to have this.
So we help them
to
enlighten.
I'm gonna
have that
agree.
conversation. You
Yeah.
have to be able to go, Courageous, let's have the conversation. I'm falling short. Somebody pointed out to me, help me understand that there is potentially another way. People don't always understand their biases until someone says, let me take off your glasses and clean them up.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
Oh, that looks ugly.
Yeah.
But you know what,
I
I'm
would just
going to
like to
answer to
agree.
you as well.
Yeah.
Most people don't want to talk about unconscious bias. Let's just be clear. So unconscious bias, even if you brought it to their attention, oh, you misread what I said, or
There's
you
always an
misun-
excuse.
You misunderstood what I was trying to come across. You know, we really love you. You're really great. You're a great HR specialist and director. So that's where it gets lost in translation, and they go back to what they know. So you can have all the courage you want. I think it's an ever-moving evolutionary shift. It's not something we'll just have to stay in these kinds of conversation. And here's the thing that's happening to men, the Me Too movement. You know how scared men are of women? Oh, no, listen, I had a guy the other day. He was trying
Say that again, yeah.
Scared as we are of them.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's probably true, but at the end of the day, the Me Too movement is women are now going around, you looked at me the wrong way, you looked at me the wrong way. That's another bias that has been very loud for our men, and we can't make it in our society without our men. So we have to look at it, it'll be an ever-moving target.
Right.
Because I can have all the courage in the world, and if that person is going to say, oh, no, that's not what I really, you know I love you, Marge. I would never be that kind of person. You know, can we go out to dinner? We'll be all right, right? Okay. And that's it for them. Because it takes a really strong person to change a mindset. So I'm just saying it's a conversation.
When I talk
Perfect.
about
Yeah.
courage, I mean courage, like you said, on behalf of both parties. And not everybody's there. Like you said, it's the moving target.
It's a moving
And the
they
first step
may
of courage is
let one
talking
go.
about it.
I'm ready now.
Yeah.
It may be 6 months later. It may be, they may never
But at
come
least you brought it
around.
up, right.
You know,
And we're having fun, and we're believe it or not, 7 minutes out. So
Well,
one question,
can
and
you-
then we're going to go down the panel.
I actually wanted to, can you rephrase the question that you asked? Whose responsibility is it?
Oh, okay. So for women's empowerment, is it a shared responsibility for women to kind of take a stake or put their stake in the ground? Or is it men's responsibility to be accommodating and pay attention and listen and learn?
And it's both. So I'm Glenda Gracia-Rivera. I'm the Director of Professional Development and Training at the Center for Women in Work. And no one entity can do this alone. And I think that what I'm hearing a lot today, not just in this session, is about personal responsibility, and we're not talking about structures, right? And we're not talking about institutional and structural barriers that exist, right? That are really just in the way. And your last statement was something about, oh my God. You made a statement which was going to kind of echo what I was saying. So we can't do it without you, right? So all of the women in this room are really powerful and can really want all of these great things to happen. I was just talking to Bill in the hallway, and I have a great client who said, oh, we don't have any women in our C-suite. We really want to do a training program for them. And I said, well, let's stop right there, because the women are not the issue. If they are your senior leaders, and if they are VPs, but they are not making it to the C level, then guarantee you they do not need a management program to tell them how to lead people better. They do not need communication skills. They do not need all of that. They need the men to understand the barriers that have been put in place for a very long time, and how we've all been socialized in ways that we create these barriers for people that exist in the workplace, in the healthcare system, in the criminal justice system, in the housing system, right? These are systemic. They are structural. They are so deeply ingrained that they are unconscious, right? That we don't even know. So we all have to be a part of dismantling that, right? So we can't expect black people to fix racism, right? We can't expect women to fix the issue of women in leadership, because
You need
it's not
allyship.
we're not the problem.
Yeah, you need allyship. We got 5 minutes, so we're going to work our way down. This is fantastic, by the way. Thank you. Appreciate it, and appreciate just the willingness to engage. I was going to say one or two. Let's make it one. One takeaway. If you were going to give one takeaway to everyone here as to one thing that they can either change personally from a personal responsibility point of view, or take back to their organization and from an organizational point of view, to either help themselves identify their own unconscious bias and become better individuals, or help change the structures in which they are involved and make sure that that structure or the other people in that environment are more conscious and not having unconscious biases that are getting in the way of.
It is, it's a lot, but
It's a lot.
I'll stick to 30 seconds.
Yes, stick to 30
Which is odd for me. But one thing I would say is lead with two things. Lead with positive intent in every conversation you have. Use the phrase, help me understand, when they say something that doesn't make sense to you. Don't go attacking it. Like, help me understand what you mean by blank. And also remember, we don't know what we don't know. So be courageous and ask those questions and have those conversations that might be uncomfortable, and see what you can learn about being comfortable with being, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's where we're at right now. And I'll also leave you all with our suggested reading list we have. I'll leave a copy here. So there's a bunch of books that are on here that are really good if anybody wants it, just in relation to the top of that hand today. So thank you.
Thank you.
The takeaway from me would be staying in the present moment. Do not let your personal emotions or think it's a personal attack against you. Hear it, see it, follow up with what Billy says, let it go as quickly as you can, get back to the point and the reason why you're there in the room in the first place, so that you can continue to be a contributor, because I tend to find when they start out that way, but you're a major contributory, and you can see what their point that they're trying to make, all of that dissolves, and then they all of a sudden just hear you, and all of that other bias drops down and gets very, very low.
Thank you, Marge.
Thank you for having me.
Go ahead, I gotta take some more. Okay. I absolutely love what you said, staying in the present moment, and I'm going to teach you a technique for staying in the present moment, and I think the best way to do it is to feel it. Sit back in your chair right now and close your eyes. Put your 2 feet on the ground. When you put your 2 feet on the ground, your nervous system calms down. You got to think of your nervous system like a snow globe. Every time you're faced with something you don't like, it shakes up. Any action you take from that point of view is going to be not very effective. It's going to be kind of scattered. So your 2 feet on the ground, put your arms at your sides with your palms facing forward, and close your eyes and pull your collarbones apart. Pretend your collarbones are in this traction machine. So you're not going to thrust your chest and you're not going to get your back out. You're just going to pull your collarbones apart. And now inhale through your nose and hear it in the back of your throat like you're Darth Vader. Hear it coming in, count to 6. Now this room should be humming with Darth Vaders. Hear it coming out, count to 8. Hear it in the back of your throat. Hear it coming in, count to 6. When you vibrate in the back of your throat, you got a little bone back there called the hyoid bone. When it vibrates, it sends messages from your brain to dilate your blood vessels. And exhale again. Pull your collarbones apart again. And inhale through your nose, hear it in the back of your throat. And exhale. And if that's the preparation you do before you go into any situation that you think is contentious, you just got out ahead of it.
And I think once you get done breathing, you can then ask the questions. And it's not the challenge or being confrontational, but the how, the why, the how, the why. Help others to think. Because sometimes like this, we're not even aware. So you don't have to go and go, you don't have enough women on the board. How is it that we are going to be ready for the 21st century or for the next 5 years? That's the question to ask. What do you think that, how is our board going to represent the public that it serves, our customers? Because our board does not currently represent the diversity of our customers. You don't have to say you don't have enough African American, enough minority. Ask those kinds of questions. That helps people begin to think and go, you are thinking in the best interest of the business, and it's not personal, because it's not.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.